Hello, this is Mess About 1, and I am in the rural part of the southeastern United States. I just finished watching Peter's latest video and his description of the conditions in Great Britain during World War II, which would have been between 1940 and 1945. And one part of his description caught my attention, and I noticed Peter stopped short on a full description, and what caught my attention was his mentioning of the dreaded outside toilet, he called it. And then he paused and said he wouldn't go into that. He did say that they had flushable toilets, and there was a water closet inside the outside toilet. And I want to compare that to my experience, not as far back as 1945 or the early part of the 40s, because I was born in 1945, so I wouldn't have that memory. But I do have memories of the rural South and how we handle those matters, say around between 1950 and 1955, even later than that for some places. And again, I'm talking about the rural South, not the cities, not the towns, but out in the country. And my remembrance is that when I lived in both a small town which had utilities and inside running water and inside bathrooms, but I also lived, especially in that time frame between the early 50s and the late 50s, out in the country on a farm, on a 20-acre farm. Matter of fact, the farm was on Sand Mountain, which is in northeastern Alabama. And the condition there was completely different from the conditions just 10 miles away in an organized small city where there was utilities. But anyway, we moved out from the city to that farm, and that's where I have my memories of conditions in the 1950s in the rural South, at least rural Alabama. Now, Peter's description of an outside toilet we called an outhouse, or an outdoor toilet, was our description of it. A necessity for sure, and it was outside because for one thing, we didn't have running water inside the house. We didn't have any kind of sewer system or septic system, so for obvious reasons it had to be outside the house. Matter of fact, it needed to be far outside the house, the further the better. Of course, there was a compromise in that if you put it too far, you had a long walk. If you put it too close, you had other problems, if you can use your imagination. And those long walks were not good at all at night during rainy weather or during cold weather. So you compromised. You put it as close as you could, but as far away as was necessary. I might put it that way. And I remember my grandfather and my father, maybe uncles, preparing a new outhouse at a house my uncle had built or was needing a new outside facility. But anyway, I remember seeing that prepared. And the process was dig a big hole in the ground. They usually dug a square hole, somewhere between, I'd say, 4 feet by 3 feet, something like that. And they would dig it down about 4 or 5 feet deep. Just a hole in the ground is all it was. It was all that was necessary. And then on top of that, normally conditions weren't real good out in the rural South, so they used whatever scrap lumber and tin and whatever they had around to build that structure, to build a house around that pit in the ground. And most people put a floor in it. There'd be a wooden floor, and at the rear of the toilet there'd be one door coming in front, and you see all the cartoons with the moon shape or the star shape or the some kind of cutout in the front door, and I'm supposing that was for ventilation. But anyway, on the back side they would build a raised box that would cover that pit. It was in the back of the toilet. Now they would put structure around the bottom to set it on the ground, or maybe even posts to put it down into the ground. But anyway, they built a box, a wooden slat box on the back of that floor. And they would make the height of that box, that platform, about the sitting height of an adult, and for very good reason. They didn't consider the children. There wasn't a short one and a tall one, but there was one about the right height for a normal adult, and the children had to make out the best they could. Now, these things were not fancy at all. If you can imagine rough-hewn, rough-cut timber is what the ones I remember were made out of. The floor, the box, the seat, the sides, the door, everything was out of rough lumber. But like I say, they used what they had, and most times that was sawmill cut lumber. So they built this thing up. They put 3 sides on it. They put a single door in the front with some kind of latch. Some didn't have latches. Some you had to you had to hold the door shut when you went inside. On some of them, they were minimal structures for sure. And let me get on my story, because I'll run too long if I don't. But anyway, these things had no seat other than the hole cut out in that top of that box at the back of